Hello everyone. We have Aaron Anderson today on the show. Hi, Aaron. How are you doing? It's nice to be able to finally return the favor and have you like on my own podcast as well after being on yours.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on. I'm excited to dive in with you and see what we can learn.
Cool. Awesome. So yeah, we're gonna talk a little bit about content promotion, link building specifically. That's what you do for the most part, right? So the first question is what does content promotion mean to you and what's your take on using link building to promote content essentially?
Okay. For me, I think content promotion is anything that you might do to get your content in front of an audience. So there's lots of different ways you might promote content, whether sharing on social or like link building is what I do, or to tap into other people's communities that they might already have. As far as link building specifically, that's if SEO is an important part of your content and your content strategy, then link building should definitely be something that is a part of that focus of how to get that content to be optimized and to rank for the relevant keywords. Sometimes, and obviously, it depends on the site and how authoritative the site is. Some sites, when they publish content with very little help from links, it can rank quite well, depending on how competitive it is. But there's many industries where if there's a lot of competition or whatnot, then you'll need a lot of help from link building to have any chance of that content ranking and getting visitors and traffic.
In your own opinion, is link building a method that can work with every single type of content? Or do you think each individual type of content maybe is better suited for different promotion strategies?
Yeah, I mean, it really depends on your link building strategy. So the way I do link building is that I'm trying to get content in front of people, and if they find value in it, then they will build links to it. That's there's not I'm not paying them for links or giving them a guest post. So with that type of link building, the content is going to be it's really important what the content is and how valuable I think it would be when doing outreach to somebody, because there's certain types of content where I might maybe the site owner thinks their content is great, but I'll look at it and I say, okay, but if we're outreaching other websites, like why would they link to this piece of content? You might think the content is great, but why would they link to it? What's their incentive for linking to it? So there's definitely certain types of content that are going to do better in earning links because there's more value to other site owners or the people that will actually be able to add the links.
Yeah, that makes total sense. So, going back a couple steps, what's your view on the balance between content promotion and content creation? Is there a right balance? Is one more important than the other?
If I had to choose, I would say creation is probably more important than promotion, just because so much you can do a lot in the creation process to make that content more easily promotable or maybe just to be able to promote itself. But there's definitely a balance. Most people that if you really want to be competitive, you have to both consider the creation and the promotion side. And there's a lot you can do in the creation to help your content be easier to promote. And if you think of promotion before you create content, I think that's the best way to probably approach it, is that you're considering how are we going to promote this piece before we even create the content, because then it informs that creation strategy and ensures that you're actually building something that will be able to garner links on its own.
Yeah, this is the case as well with link building, right? So, link building should be taken into account before you start the content creation because then it might be easier to get the content to acquire backlinks. So, what's your experience with this? Do you have any specific examples or strategies that you use to think about link building when you create the content so that it's easier to build backlinks to it?
Sure. I think it depends a lot on the types of content, but I can share an example of I there was a website that they had one of these stat pages and it had like hundreds of referring domains to it. And so I was looking through the backlink profile just to understand how they got these links to start with. Because once you have one of those pages that's ranking, it just generates links on its own. But when you start, you write a stats page, how do you get those first initial links? So as I was going through their backlink profile, I saw some little examples where they had links to that page that were with a completely different brand's anchor text. And so when I see that, I know, generally speaking, I assume that they used broken link building because that's a common thing when you do broken link building. sometimes they'll swap out the link, but they won't change the anchor text. So if they're linking to another brand name
Yeah.
and then that link now it goes to a different brand, it's okay, they were using broken link. So when I saw that, I started trying to incorporate that more. So if a client is going to do a stats page, what I can do is I can find broken links, I can find stats, and then I can give them the content that I want them to create. Say, okay, these are the stats I want you to include on this page, so that once the stats page is awake, we already have a bunch of prospects for broken links that we can go and try to get those initial links to get that page ranking on its own. And so then once it's ranking on its own, then it can go. But if you just build the stats page and ask me to build links to it, like it might be a little bit harder than if we both collaborate and identify some opportunities up front that we can target, and then build the links that way. It makes it a little bit easier.
It's basically like reverse engineering, injecting the things that you need to make the content linkable.
Sure.
What we typically do is essentially the opposite. So we take the content that's been already created. For example, we have a data study and we notice that the data study talks about a specific subtopics. So what we do is we find those pages that mention those subtopics. So it's similar, but yeah, we can do that with content that's been already created without having to edit the content. But I definitely think that what you do is more effective because you already know that there's people linking to these stats. And so you just have to reach out and tell them the link is broken. Do you want to fix it? Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. What I really like about broken link building is that the results are very predictable. If you can get the opportunities and you can have the content that's a perfect replacement, I know what those results are going to be. Sometimes when you find instances like you were mentioning, like maybe content that where you think like supporting data or something would be a good fit, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. There's just more uncertainty, I guess.
Yeah, I really
and
need to be creative.
and I guess the creativity of the pitch is maybe where I struggle. So I like things that are very, I just know what it's going to be.
But to each his own. The other thing is broken link building has been around for a while. So is it still working? Because we typically don't do a lot of it. So I'm just wondering, are still people open to really actually go in there and replace a link with a new one?
Yeah, that's actually what I love about it, is because it's been around. It's like one of the first link building strategies ever. And that's still 20 years later, it's still working. I looked and I think in the last year or so, I've built like links to over like 2,000 unique referring domains just with broken link buildings. Yeah, and I've gotten links from New York Times, from parade.com, from Men's Health. So some really top tier sites have just replaced a broken link. A lot of people say, "Oh, wow, you can still use it today." So it's definitely a strategy that still works. There are things that make it more successful and or less successful, like anything. The more you do it and the more you know, like the more successful it is. But yeah, it works in a lot of instances, but it's better if it really, if you have a perfect replacement for broken link, that's when it's best. And if you're trying to fit a certain, and that's what makes it difficult. If you have a very specific piece of content you're trying to build links to, that can be a challenge. So it works best when you're flexible in terms of the content you're willing to promote, and then you can promote it based on the opportunities you find. And but yeah, that's when it's most successful.
So I guess what you can also do is get links to the content they use for the broken link kind of opportunity, and then use internal links to redirect some of that link juice to
Yep.
maybe other pages that you want to promote. That always
Sure.
works.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, you mentioned that you need to have the right content for the right opportunity, right? So what are some other qualities that make content more linkable?
Yeah, so I think the things that make content linkable, I mentioned earlier, is that you have to think of who is going to be adding the link in a particular industry. Who is this? So if you're reaching out to resource pages from universities, like they're going to have certain incentives. Like what type of content would they be interested in? If you're linking out to other content websites in a certain niche, like what would be their incentive? And so it's understanding who your audience is, and not your audience for the content, but your audience for who could help promote it and what their incentives are, and making sure that you have something that would resonate with them. So the types of things that generally help, anything that's tools are always helpful, data, any study or data that you create yourself that's original research. These types of things generally are the types of content that journalists and people that have the ability to add links, they're things that they like to link to. but it will really depend on your industry, your niche, and who those people are that you are wanting to get links from and what their motivations are.
So do you use primarily email as like a way to reach out, or do you also use like social media channels? Does the medium of reaching out matter?
Yeah, I primarily use email, but social media channels can be very good as well. It's just about what you get comfortable with and what you're able to execute well.
The main challenge is because we've been seeing social media and reaching out on social media like LinkedIn, for example, works really well. If you follow the person beforehand, if you try to maybe talk to them just in a non promotional kind of way before you reach out for the link or whatever it is that you want to promote, it works really well. The main difficult for us as an agency is to manage it at scale because there's like really no tools. Yeah, maybe they are, but it's difficult to manage the outreach on LinkedIn, Twitter, and whatever at scale for multiple clients, as well as the follow ups and all these things. Do you know of any tool that can do that that might be helpful in this?
I think one of the challenges there, at least the way I normally do outreach, is I normally outreach as if I am the client. And so if I'm outreaching as the client, are they giving me their social media profiles that I can use? Or that's what makes it a little difficult. Now, if you just have a fake persona and then you can create fake social profiles, all those things, that is what it is. But if I'm reaching out as a real person that I am not, that can be a challenge. As far as tools to do that, yeah, I'm not aware of any that kind of help automate on the social media side to do that well. But again, I haven't really dug into that. The main tool I use is Ahrefs. That's my favorite tool, but it's like my
You'll be talking to a lot of people on your podcast as well. You've been working on this for a long time. So, what do you think are the most common mistakes that people make when they do link building or content promotion in general?
I think the biggest mistake is just not recognizing the difference between the audiences of who might consume the content and who is going to be able to link to the content. Because I get people coming to me all the time and they say, I have great content. Like building links to this should be easy. And then I look at the content and I'm like, I understand you might think this content is amazing, but I cannot figure out who would be interested in linking to it. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So that's a big challenge because it's maybe a difficult conversation to have. It's like someone put their blood, sweat, and tears into creating content. I have to be a bad guy in a certain sense where I have to tell them, okay, like this could be really great content, but who's going to link to it and why are they going to link to it? And that's the side that I'm always looking at. And so I think that's the biggest issue that I see on an ongoing basis is just not recognizing that you're serving two different audiences here.
Yeah,
And
it's your customer and the people that should link, which is technically your peers. So yeah, people that can essentially pass the SEO juice through the link to get you to rank higher. Something else that we see as well is the fact that people want to promote the wrong type of content. So maybe they have just a bunch of news updates on their SaaS product that basically are like, we just released this feature. And then they ask us to build links to that content. It doesn't really make sense because even if we do, which is very difficult, then the content wouldn't be able to rank for any keyword, right? So what's the point in building backlinks to content that can't rank or that is not even very relevant to the pain points of your audience? Is this something that you've experienced as well? Clients that don't have a really well thought out content strategy?
I don't know necessarily about that, but it's a very common occurrence that clients will want just links to their money pages only. And that can be a challenge. Again, it just comes down to how are you building links. And so if you come to me and you're in a very commercial niche and you only want links to your very commercial pages, I'm just going to say, okay, the only reason someone's going to link to this is if they have some financial incentive to do, because otherwise they just won't link to it. So if you're okay with that, it's just about recognizing, okay, who will link to this and why, and then are you comfortable with what it takes to build links? And if it's okay, the only way you're going to get links to this page, the way I see, is that you're going to have to pay for them. And are you comfortable paying for them? And I normally don't take on clients where that's the only approach. And so if it's like your only way is to buy links, I don't get super excited about that kind of link building. And but I don't necessarily have anything wrong with it. It's just you just have to recognize, okay, that's if you're stuck on this is the only page I want links to, and it's just not a page that people are going to want, then you just gonna have to.
For those types of like commercial pages, we think guest posting typically is the only way, unless you want to pay for links, like you mentioned. Is guest posting something else that you do as well, or not?
It's something that I haven't done much of. I'll be honest that it's something that I've started doing more recently, just because even clients that we've built a lot of links for a long time, like maybe 4 years, at some point it's like, okay, I have to start doing some things a little differently because you reach a point where there's only so much outreach, no matter what your strategy is. There's only so much you can do with any particular strategy before you eventually run out of the ability to keep doing that on an ongoing basis.
Yeah, exactly. I call it the pool of prospects is finished. There's no more people to reach out to for some topics, basically.
Or you can always go back and then dip back in. Okay, if we haven't reached out to certain prospects in a certain length of time, maybe we'll kind of reach. But yeah, it gets harder the longer you've kind of doing it to keep things fresh and different can be a challenge.
Yeah, so I think as posting, it's probably always going to be the most flexible kind of link building method because you can essentially craft different content for different pages and different strategies. So it's always very flexible. The main problem that I see with guest posting is the fact that it's slow because you have to come up with the topics, negotiate the topics, get it agreed, get the content done, send it to the site, get it published. So while managing multiple clients, it's always very difficult to be able to meet the monthly target, for example, because it takes a long time. It still works as well, even though that's been around for 20 years, like broken link building.
Yeah. Yeah. My preference is, I think because when you do guest posting, there's more coordination. You got the content, and then once you give them the content, you have to wait for them to publish it. And so I guess maybe I'm an impatient person. So if I want to send an email, I either want yes or no, and then I just move on.
I'm with you on that. Yeah.
So it's a little bit harder for me to kind of extend that and have the additional like back and forth. But as far as a strategy, I'm totally fine with it with certain parameters if you maintain certain quality standards and whatnot. But I think one thing that's really helpful with content promotion is to be a little bit flexible if you can, as far as like the content that you are willing or able to promote. Because if you come to me and say, hey, like this is the only page I want to promote, you're just limiting the options for promotion. And so if I can have a lot of options, and I understand like maybe there's some priorities that are higher than others or whatnot, but if I have options, it allows me to respond to opportunities that might come up that I didn't know because I just uncover them while I was like doing work. For example, we had a client that they're in the resume building space. And when I first started with them, it was like, oh, we want links to this resume builder page. That was their main page that they wanted me to build links to. So I started trying to build links, and I was doing a lot of outreach to universities and stuff. And I quickly found out that a lot of universities, they didn't really love the idea of using templates for a resume. I was getting pushback to, oh yeah, we don't like our students to use resumes, or we don't like our students to use templates. And I was getting this pushback. And so if I would have continued, just kept pushing it, like even though I was getting a lot of negative feedback, it may have been hard to have success. So I solved it for a time and focused on other content. But then later, I came across a great broken link opportunity that was basically from a competitor that had done outreach to their page and had let that page break for whatever reason. I don't know. And we were able to use it and got some really amazing links. And it was a very successful campaign. And so sometimes if you just focus on, okay, we need to promote this piece of content, it has to be promoted right now within this like timeline, that can make sometimes difficult, just depending. So I think if you can be flexible, at least from a link building perspective, you can be somewhat flexible to be open to opportunities you might stumble across that might end up being more fruitful and generate more links. If you're open to them, that just gives you more options and allows you to adjust based on what you find. Where if you just stick to, okay, we have to build links now and this time frame, like you just might be stuck doing things less effectively than if you're able to adapt.
That's a very good point. Like most clients, unfortunately, are quite rigid in the pages that they want to promote. When it comes to picking the pages to build backlinks to, do you work together with the clients in choosing the best pages?
If they're super rigid and I don't think it's workable, I'll just tell them like, yeah, and I'm not sure like we would be able to be successful like with this rigidity. So it just depends like on their industry and what I think. I generally prefer if they can be more flexible, but yeah, I have to look at their industry and see what's viable. But normally, if they're like, oh, we want links to only these few pages, with my approach of not doing a lot of paid linking or guest posting, it's like it can just not be feasible at all. And so it's just being open and saying, okay, we can do that. Because sometimes they'll want links to specific pages, but they want like my approach, which is mostly earned backlinks. And then I have to say, that's not really possible. If you want earned backlinks, you have to build links to what people are willing to link to.
Yeah, and it's
And
also
so,
important that like clients understand that they are reaching out to you for help because you are the expert, right? Because otherwise they would just do it themselves. So we just had to say no to a client that initially said they wanted to build links to top of the funnel content, which was totally fine for us. We gave them all sorts of expectation on what we might be able to do. And then at some point they get out of the like this idea that they want to also build links to some landing pages, which was not the original plan. So we had to tell them, if we do this, then the results are not going to be the same that we promised you when we had the first call. And yeah, basically they had to be like, okay, we're going to go away for 6 months and reassess the content strategy, because essentially we also showed them that for the main target keyword, the top 10 results were blog articles. They wanted to rank for this keyword with a landing page. So yeah, it doesn't really work. And we just simply told them, if you want to rank for this keyword, you might have to write a blog article that's similar or better or different than the ones that are ranking, right? So this is like the content type, search intent thing. This is something that you look for as well.
yeah, if it's something, the way I like to look at this is that if someone just builds a brand new piece of content and it's not ranking for anything, I normally am hesitant to build backlinks to it. The way I like to look at this is I say, first, let Google tell you what content it likes, and then build backlinks to it, and Google will like it better. But if you just take a piece of content that you just created and Google doesn't decide to rank it anywhere, and then you build backlinks to it, I've done this in the past with maybe a brand new website and it's a cool tool or whatever, but you build backlinks for 6 months and 6 months later it's like there's not any movement because let Google tell you it likes the content first. If the Google doesn't like the content without backlinks, building backlinks isn't necessarily going to make them like the content any better. And yeah, so it's like backlinks aren't like a cure all. And so that's promotion is a good way to put it because it helps promote what Google already likes. But if Google doesn't like it, then it doesn't make sense to just build backlinks to it.
Yeah, 100% agree. So this is why I think sometimes it might be better, especially for brand new content, to maybe do some other type of promotion, repurposing or distributing on communities, social media, whatever, to start seeing some traction. So then once the content starts ranking, then you can possibly build backlinks, because this also makes it look more natural, right? It doesn't really make sense that content that's ranking page 100 in Google starts all of a sudden getting backlinks from Forbes or whatever, right? Because there's no way that people have found a content unless somebody is actively building backlinks to it, which Google doesn't really like. We typically try to promote pages and build backlinks to pages that are ranking between page 3 and the bottom of page 1 of Google, right? If they don't have a lot of backlinks, that's even better, because it means that Google is liking that page with not a lot of backlinks. So maybe with just a couple of extra, the page might shoot to the top of page 1. How do you measure the success of your campaigns? Is it just purely in terms of the number of backlinks or the metrics for these backlinks? Or do you also look at traffic, conversions, and things like that?
Yeah, I normally don't dive into trying to measure ROI. It can be a bit difficult to make the correct attribution and to claim success for everything. I mostly focus on number of backlinks and then try to identify pages where those pages will benefit most from the backlinks. So like you said, if you identify pages that are ranking in that range from bottom of 1 to the page 2 or 3, those have maybe the highest probability of movement with backlinks. So that helps me choose the priorities, but at the end of the day, it's I work kind of we're focused on number of backlinks. But the question, if someone is really concerned of ROI, or that can be difficult, I tend to shy away from making any sort of great promises. I'm really cautious about what I claim or what I make promises about. So I would be on the more conservative side of, if you're that focused, like for me, most clients, if they come to me, it's links are important and you do want to keep building links on an ongoing basis. And if you need to see a very specific ROI, then I wouldn't do SEO. I would do paid ads. So that's how I manage it. Maybe not the best way. It'd be nice to be able to have a nice model that can predict, but
Yeah, I think that makes perfect sense, especially because, like, as link builders, we only control one thing, right? There's a ton of other things that we don't control, like technical SEO, content quality, keyword targeting, and all of these things. What we say to client and what we try to report on as well is traffic and position increase for the main pages that we build backlinks to. Something that we really like to do, since we focus on those pages and keywords that rank page 2, page 3, is we like to report on the increase of keyword rankings in the top like 10 positions, for example. So that's something that's been working quite well for us.
that's great. I think I have this maybe aversion to this keyword tracking, just because before being in link building, I was involved in some other agencies, and they would do monthly calls with clients and we would do these reports and look at the increases. For me, it just all felt like a bit of a, every month we're just trying to sell you that we're worth what you're paying us. And I didn't like that. Like for me, I just want to be transparent. I'm going to tell you what I can do, what I can't do. I'm not going to try to package this and sell you if you don't find the value. I'm a straight shooter. And so I guess maybe I have some aversion to it because just of
Yeah,
that,
that makes
like
sense.
the more stereotypical SEO reports every month. Oh yeah, look at it. And because I've put those reports together and you're trying to find any reason to make it say it's a green increase, which sometimes, okay, it keeps going up and down. And yeah, right now it's up, but it's going. So it can be a little hard to like always like, that's why it feels a little, yeah, I guess I have a hard time with that for that reason.
Yeah, it can definitely feel fabricated, right? Sometimes. And like the agency is trying to push the data into the direction that they want to be able to show that they are being successful. For us, the main thing, and that's the only thing that matters, is that we report because we start every client project with a strategy. And so we pick specific pages that we want to increase the rankings for. And so the reporting for us is just a matter of keeping the clients updated on what's going on with those pages, right? So that we can tell them, okay, we've worked on these two pages in the last quarter. We saw increases or we didn't see increases. Should we change our strategy? Should we look for different types of backlinks? Should we try different strategies? It's basically like an ongoing conversation. So we just try to make the client feel part of the process and what we do.
Yeah, it's a proactive way to do it. I think I do a lot of that kind of internally. Just, oh, this isn't working. Let's just shift. Or, but some clients want to be voicing, like putting their input more than others. And yeah, I guess if you're proactive about it, maybe that's better because it's just everyone's more on the same page.
Yeah,
But
sometimes it also helps because most of the time, clients I've noticed wouldn't say anything, but then they come up after 6 months and they're like, okay, we want to cancel. So the best way is to inject this kind of touch points that are intentional so that you keep them engaged. You show them that something is moving and you're not just some software tool that's like automatically doing something in your back room and they're paying every month, right?
one thing I don't know is like every time like a link is built, they'll get an email with that specific link and like all the data points of that link. And that seems to be the way, because because if you just have a spreadsheet and oh yeah, I got to check the spreadsheet, but every single time you get an email, oh, you can see what's happening and you don't feel necessarily that maybe the need to, oh, I got to check the spreadsheet or what are they doing? So maybe I guess that's a touch point, but it's a little different.
So tying this back to content promotion, I think it's always worth also sharing things with clients. Like, for example, if we send a campaign and we get 10 email replies, which are very nice from people that are loving the content and things like that, and then might be like, oh, this is amazing content. We're going to share it on our social media channels. So we report on the link, but at the same time, we show the clients that the content is getting reach, is being amplified on some other channels. And so this is all part of content promotion, right?
Yeah, and one other thing that I thought would be good to mention is for us too, when clients come to us, part of it is okay, which pieces of content are most likely to be able to be promoted. But the other part is too, if you really want links to this specific page, how can we increase the ability for us to promote this piece of content? So sometimes I'll take clients and they have ads on these pages and their ads are a bit distracting. I say, okay, while we're promoting this content, can you turn off the ads? Or while we're promoting this content, can you remove your CTAs? Or whatever. If there's anything that makes it seem like this will be harder to get people interested in this content, can we adjust this temporarily while we promote the content? And then later you can add it back. So that's another thing that we often do if it's they make all their money from ads and the ads are pop-ups or whatever. If things are distracting, let's make this as easy for people to consume with less issues that may come up because people sometimes will voice concerns. Yeah, friction.
Yeah,
Yeah,
basically
there you go.
reduce the friction. Yeah, yeah. That's very cool. It's also something else that it's what we were talking about before, making the content more linkable. So anything that's like a distraction is worth removing. What would you say are any new trends? Is there anything that you've seen besides ChatGPT that everybody's talking about that's going to impact the content industry?
Yeah, everybody's
But you can
talking
talk
about
about ChatGPT anyways.
everybody's talking about AI and how it's gonna like transform and everything. And I guess I tend to be more on the side of I'm not going to try to predict the future. But yeah, AI is definitely going to have an impact. As to what exactly that's going to be long term, it's everybody's guess right now. And so I'll just keep waiting and watching and seeing how it develops.
Are you using any of that in your own work to shortcut, for example, on like repetitive tasks or things like that so far?
No, I haven't started using anything yet, but I'm open to it.
Started experimenting with ChatGPT to save time on some of on the organization aspect. For example, something very cool is when you do an outreach email and the typical phrase is like, I saw your article on, and then most people just simply take the full title in quotes, which looks super automated. So what we typically do is just we manually go through the pages and we write a dynamic field that, for example, if the article is 10 cold email tips for this, blah, blah, blah. The dynamic field is going to be cold email tips, right? So the email is going to read, hey, I saw your article on cold email tip, which makes sense. So I basically was able to do this with ChatGPT. So I was like, take this list of 50 page titles. Now write this custom dynamic field that's going to go into this template for the email. Write it without capital letters, blah, blah, blah. So it spits out the list of all of these fields like in a couple seconds. That was amazing.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely something. I guess sometimes it's like, how do you do this, and then how do you implement into your workflow, which are both two different questions. So, I guess I get hung up sometimes on, okay, that's cool, but then how do I get that into my current workflow? But
If there's anything that you think, oh my God, I have to spend 10 hours doing this task, that might be something worth like investigating into. So it's always going to be different based on what you do. So yeah, final question. I hope you prepared this. So if you could have any 80s movie character promote your content or sending out link building emails, who would it be and why for you?
yeah, for this, I have to go to Back to the Future
Yeah, makes sense.
because those are always trying to predict the future. So if you could give them content back in 95 and say, hey, this is the type of link building you should be doing now because there's going to be all these changes that will make these different experiments bad. Like they're going to treat that like the holy grail of link building.
Awesome, awesome, awesome
Yeah.
answer. All right. So, is there any final thoughts that you would like to leave our audience with? Where can people find you? Website, social media?
Sure. Yeah. So I run the podcast, Let's Talk Link Building. So if you want to get into the nitty gritty of how different people doing link building, follow me there. And my agency is LinkPitch at linkpitch.io. And then you can follow me on LinkedIn. I post occasionally. I'm not like a super user yet, but yeah.
Awesome. Cool. Thanks a lot for being here, Aaron. It's been great. And yeah, see you soon.
Awesome. Thanks for having me on.